Book presents The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. Part 1, Book 2, An Unfortunate Gathering. Chapter 7, A Young Man Bent upon a Career.
Alyosha helped Father Zossima to his bedroom and seated him on his bed. It was a little room furnished with the bare necessities. There was a narrow iron bedstead with a strip of felt for a mattress. In the corner, under the icons, was a reading desk with a cross and a gospel lying on it. The elder sank exhausted on the bed. His eyes glittered and he breathed hard. He looked intently at Alyosha, as though considering something. "Go, my dear boy, go. Porphyry is enough for me. Make haste. You are needed there. Go and wait at the Father Superior's table." "Let me stay here," Alyosha entreated. "You are more needed there. There is no peace there. You will wait and be of service. If evil spirits rise up, repeat the prayer. And remember, my son," the elder liked to call him that is not the place for you in the future. When it is God's will to call me, leave the monastery. Go away for good." Alyosha started. "What is it? This is not your place for the time. I bless you for great service in the world. Yours will be a long pilgrimage, and you will have to take a wife, too. You will have to bear all before you come back. There will be much to do, but I don't doubt of you, and so I send you forth. Christ is with you. Do not abandon him, and he will not abandon you. You will see great sorrow, and in that sorrow you will be happy. This is my last message to you. In sorrow seek happiness. Work, work unceasingly. Remember my words. For although I shall talk with you again, not only my days, but my hours are numbered." Alyosha's face again betrayed strong emotion. The corners of his mouth quivered. "What is it again?" Father Zossima asked, smiling gently. "The worldly may follow the dead with tears, but here we rejoice over the Father who is departing. We rejoice and pray for him. Leave me. I must pray. Go, and make haste. Be near your brothers, and not near one only, but near both." Father Zossima raised his hand to bless him. Alyosha could make no protest, though he had a great longing to remain. He longed, moreover, to ask the significance of his bowing to Dmitri. The question was on the tip of his tongue, but he dared not ask it. He knew that the elder would have explained it unasked if he had thought fit, but evidently it was not his will. That action had made a terrible impression on Alyosha. He believed blindly in its mysterious significance, mysterious and perhaps awful. As he hastened out of the hermitage precinct to reach the monastery in time to serve at the Father Superior's dinner, he felt a sudden pang at his heart and stopped short. He seemed to hear again Father Zossima's words, foretelling his approaching end. What he had foretold so exactly must invariably come to pass. Alyosha believed that implicitly. But how could he be left without him? How could he live without seeing and hearing him? Where should he go? He had told him not to weep and to leave the monastery. Good God! It was long since Alyosha had known such anguish. He hurried through the copse that divided the monastery from the hermitage, and unable to bear the burden of his thoughts, he gazed at the ancient pines beside the path. He had not far to go, about 500 paces. He expected to meet no one at that hour, but at the first turn of the path he noticed Ratikin. He was waiting for someone. "Are you waiting for me?" asked Alyosha, overtaking him. "Yes," grinned Ratikin. "You are hurrying to the Father Superior, I know. He has a banquet. There's not been such a banquet since the Superior entertained the Bishop and General Partov. Do you remember? I shan't be there, but you go and hand the saucers. Tell me one thing, Alexei. What does that vision mean? That's what I want to ask you." "What vision?" "That bowing to your brother, Dmitri. And didn't he tap the ground with his forehead too?" "You speak of Father Zossima." "Yes, of Father Zossima. Tap the ground. Ah, an irrelevant expression. Well, what of it? Anyway, what does that vision mean?" "I don't know what it means, Misha." "I knew he wouldn't explain it to you. There's nothing wonderful about it, of course, only the usual holy mummery. But there was an object in the performance. all the pious people in the town will talk about it and spread the stories through the province, wondering what it meant. To my thinking, the old man really has a keen nose. He sniffed the crime. Your house stinks of it. What crime? Rakitin evidently had something he was eager to speak of. It will be in your family, this crime, between your brothers and your rich old father. So Father Zossima flopped down to be ready for what may turn up. If something happens later on, it will be, the holy man foresaw it, prophesied it. Though it's a poor sort of prophecy, flopping like that. But it was symbolic, they'll say, an allegory, and the devil knows what all. It will be remembered to his glory. He predicted the crime and marked the criminal. That's always the way with these crazy fanatics. They cross themselves at the tavern and throw stones at the temple. Like your elder, he takes a stick to a just man and falls at the feet of a murderer. What crime? What murderer? What do you mean? Alyosha stopped dead. Rakitin stopped too. What murderer? As though you didn't know. I'll bet you've thought of it before. That's interesting too, by the way. Listen, Alyosha, you always speak the truth, though you're always between two stools. Have you thought of it or not? Answer. I have, answered Alyosha in a low voice. Even Rakitin was taken aback. What? Have you already? He cried. I've not exactly thought it, muttered Alyosha. But directly you began speaking so strangely, I fancied I thought of it myself. You see, looking at your father and your brother Mitya today, you thought of a crime. Then I'm not mistaken. But wait a minute, Alyosha broke in uneasily. What has led you to see all this? Why does it interest you? That's the first question. Two questions, disconnected but natural. I'll deal with them separately. What led me to see it? I shouldn't have seen it if I hadn't suddenly understood your brother Dmitri, seen right into the very heart of him all at once. I caught the whole man from one trait. These very honest but passionate people have a line which mustn't be crossed. If it were, he'd run at your father with a knife. But your father's a drunken and abandoned old sinner who can never draw the line. If they both let themselves go, they'll both come to grief. No, Misha, no. If that's all, you've reassured me. It won't come to that. But why are you trembling? Let me tell you, he may be honest, our Mitya, but he's a sensualist. That's the very definition and inner essence of him. It's your father has handed him on his low sensuality. Do you know, I simply wonder at you, Alyosha, how you can have kept your purity. You're a Karamazov too, you know. In your family, sensuality is carried to a disease. But now, these three sensualists are watching one another with their knives in their belts. The three of them are knocking their heads together, and you may be the fourth. You are mistaken about that woman. Dmitri despises her, said Alyosha with a sort of shudder. Grushenka? No, brother, he doesn't despise her. Since he has openly abandoned his betrothed for her, he doesn't despise her. There's something here, my dear boy, that you don't understand yet. A man will fall in love with some beauty with a woman's body, or even with a part of a woman's body, and he'll abandon his own children for her, sell his father and mother and his country, Russia too. If he's honest, he'll steal. If he's humane, he'll murder. If he's faithful, he'll deceive. Pushkin, the poet of women's feet, sung of their feet in his verse. Others don't sing their praises, but they can't look at their feet without a thrill. And it's not only their feet. Contempt's no help here, brother, even if he did despise Grushenka. He does, but he can't tear himself away. I understand that, Alyosha jerked out suddenly. Really? Well, I dare say you do understand, since you blurted out at the first word, said Rakitin malignantly. That escaped you unawares, and the confession's the more precious. So it's a familiar subject. You've thought about it already, about sensuality, I mean. Oh, you virgin soul. You're a quiet one, Alyosha. You're a saint, I know. But the devil only knows what you've thought about, and what you know already. You are pure, but you've been down into the depths. I've been watching you a long time. You're a Karamazov yourself. You're a thorough Karamazov. No doubt birth and selection have something to answer for. You're a sensualist from your father, A crazy saint from your mother. Why do you tremble? Is it true then? Do you know, Grushenka has been begging me to bring you along. I'll pull off his cassock, she says. You can't think how she keeps begging me to bring you. I wondered why she took such an interest in you. Do you know, she's an extraordinary woman too. Thank her and say I'm not coming, said Alyosha, with a strange smile. Finish what you were saying, Misha. I'll tell you my idea after. There's nothing to finish. It's all clear. It's the same old tune, brother. If even you're a sensualist at heart, what of your brother Ivan? He's a Karamazov too. What is at the root of all you Karamazovs is that you're all sensual, grasping, and crazy. Your brother Ivan writes theological articles in joke for some idiotic, unknown motive of his own, though he's an atheist, and he admits it's a fraud himself. That's your brother Ivan. He's trying to get Mitya's betrothed for himself, and I fancy he'll succeed too. And what's more, it's with Mitya's consent, for Mitya will surrender his betrothed to him to be rid of her and escape to Grushenka. And he's ready to do that in spite of all his nobility and disinterestedness. Observe that. Those are the most fatal people. Who the devil can make you out? He recognizes his vileness and goes on with it. Let me tell you too, the old man, your father, is standing in Mitya's way now. He has suddenly gone crazy over Grushenka. His mouth waters at the sight of her. It's simply on her account he made that scene in the cell just now, simply because the muse have called her an abandoned creature. He's worse than a tomcat in love. At first she was only employed by him in connection with his taverns and some other shady business, but now he has suddenly realized all she is and has gone wild about her. He keeps pestering her with his offers, not honorable ones, of course, and they'll come into collision, the precious father and son, on that path. But Grushenka favors neither of them. She's still playing with them and teasing them both, considering which she can get most out of. For though she could filch a lot of money from the papa, he won't marry her, and maybe he'll turn stingy in the end and keep his purse shut. That's where Mitya's value comes in. He has no money, but he's ready to marry her. Yes, ready to marry her. To abandon his betrothed, a rare beauty, Katerina Ivanovna, who is rich and the daughter of a colonel, and to marry Grushenka, who has been the mistress of a dissolute old merchant, Samsonov, a coarse, uneducated provincial mayor. Some murderous conflict may well come to pass from all this, and that's what your brother Ivan is waiting for. It would suit him down to the ground. He'll carry off Katerina Ivanovna, for whom he is languishing, and pocket her dowry of 60,000. That's very alluring to start with, for a man of no consequence and a beggar. And take note, he won't be wronging Mitya, but doing him the greatest service. For I know as a fact that Mitya only last week, when he was with some gypsy girls drunk in a tavern, cried out aloud that he was unworthy of his betrothed, Katya, but that his brother Ivan, he was the man who deserved her. And Katerina Ivanovna will not in the end refuse such a fascinating man as Ivan. She's hesitating between the two of them already. And how has that Ivan won you all so that you all worship him? He's laughing at you and enjoying himself at your expense. How do you know? How can you speak so confidently? Alyosha asked sharply, frowning. Why do you ask? And are frightened at my answer? It shows that you know I'm speaking the truth. You don't like Ivan. Ivan won't be tempted by money. Really? And the beauty of Katerina Ivanovna? It's not only the money, though a fortune of 60,000 is an attraction. Ivan is above that. He wouldn't make up to anyone for thousands. It is not money. It's not comfort Ivan is seeking. Perhaps it's suffering he's seeking. What wild dream now? Oh, you aristocrats. Ah, Misha, he has a stormy spirit. His mind is in bondage. He is haunted by a great unsolved doubt. He is one of those who don't want millions, but an answer to their questions. That's plagiarism, Alyosha. You're quoting your eldest phrases. Ah, Ivan has set you a problem, cried Ratikin, with undisguised malice. His face changed, and his lips twitched. And the problem's a stupid one. It is no good guessing it. Rack your brains. You understand it? His article is absurd and ridiculous. And did you hear his stupid theory just now? If there is no immortality of the soul, then there is no virtue, and everything is lawful. An attractive theory for scoundrels. Not for scoundrels, but for pedantic poseurs, haunted by profound unsolved doubts. He's showing off, and what it all comes to is, on the one hand we cannot but admit, and on the other it must be confessed. His whole theory is a fraud. Humanity will find in itself the power to live for virtue even without believing in mortality. It will find it in love for freedom, for equality, for fraternity. Ratikin could hardly restrain himself in his heat, but suddenly, as though remembering something, he stopped short. "Well, that's enough," he said, with a still more crooked smile. "Why are you laughing? Do you think I'm a vulgar fool?" "No, I never dreamed of thinking you a vulgar fool. You are clever. But never mind, I was silly to smile. I understand you're getting hot about it, Misha. I guess from your warmth that you are not indifferent to Katerina Ivanovna yourself. I've suspected that for a long time, brother. That's why you don't like my brother Ivan. Are you jealous of him? And jealous of her money too? Won't you add that? I'll say nothing about money. I'm not going to insult you. I believe it, since you say so, but confound you, and your brother Ivan with you. Don't you understand that one might very well dislike him apart from Katerina Ivanovna? And why the devil should I like him? He condescends to abuse me, you know. Why haven't I a right to abuse him? I never heard of his saying anything about you, good or bad. He doesn't speak of you at all. But I heard that the day before yesterday at Katerina Ivanovna's, he was abusing me for all he was worth. You see what an interest he takes in your humble servant. And which is the jealous one after that? Brother, I can't say. He was so good as to express the opinion that if I don't go in for the career of an Archimandrite in the immediate future and don't become a monk, I shall be sure to go to Petersburg and get on to some solid magazine as a reviewer, that I shall write for the next 10 years, and in the end become the owner of the magazine and bringing out on the liberal and atheist side, with a socialistic tinge, with a tiny gloss of socialism, but keeping a sharp lookout all the time, that is, keeping in with both sides and hoodwinking the fools. According to your brother's account, the tinge of socialism won't hinder me from laying by the proceeds and investing them under the guidance of some Jew, till at the end of my career I build a great house in Petersburg and move my publishing offices to it, and let out the upper stories to lodgers. He has even chosen the place for it, near the new stone bridge across the Neva, which they say is to be built in Petersburg. Ah, Misha, that's just what will really happen, every word of it, cried Alyosha, unable to restrain a good-humored smile. You are pleased to be sarcastic too, Alexey Fyodorovitch. No, I'm joking, forgive me. I have something quite different in my mind. But, excuse me, who can have told you all this? You can't have been at Katerina Ivanovna's yourself when he was talking about you. I wasn't there, but Dmitri Fyodorovitch was, and I heard him tell it with my own ears. If you want to know, he didn't tell me, but I overheard him. Unintentionally, of course, for I was sitting in Grushenka's bedroom and I couldn't go away because Dmitri Fyodorovitch was in the next room. Oh, yes, I'd forgotten she was a relation of yours. A relation? That Grushenka relation of mine, cried Ratikin, turning crimson. Are you mad? You're out of your mind. Why, isn't she a relation of yours? I heard so. Where can you have heard it? You Karamazovs brag of being an ancient noble family, though your father used to run about playing the buffoon at other men's tables and was only admitted to the kitchen as a favor. I may be only a priest's son, and dirt in the eyes of noblemen like you, but don't insult me so lightly and wantonly. I have a sense of honor too, Alexey Fyodorovitch. I couldn't be a relation of Grushenka, a common harlot. I beg you to understand that. Ratikin was intensely irritated. Forgive me, for goodness sake, I had no idea. Besides, how can you call her a harlot? Is she the sort of woman? Alyosha flushed suddenly. I tell you again, I heard that she was a relation of yours. You often go to see her, and you told me yourself you're not her lover. I never dreamed that you of all people had such contempt for her. Does she really deserve it? I may have reasons of my own for fisting her. That's not your business. But as for relationship, your brother or even your father is more likely to make her yours than mine. Well, here we are. You'd better go to the kitchen. Hello, what's wrong? What is it? Are we late? They can't have finished dinner so soon. Have the Karamazovs been making trouble again? No doubt they have. Here's your father and your brother Ivan after him. They've broken out from the Father Superiors. And look, Father Isidore's shouting out something after them from the steps. And your father's shouting and waving his arms. I expect he's swearing. And there goes Musov driving away in his carriage. You see, he's going. And there's old Maximov running. There must have been a row. There can't have been any dinner. Surely they've not been beating the Father Superior. Or have they, perhaps, been beaten? It would serve them right. There was reason for Rakitin's exclamations. There had been a scandalous and unprecedented scene. It had all come from the impulse of a moment.
Chapter 8. The Scandalous Scene.
Musov, as a man of breeding and delicacy, could not but feel some inward qualms when he reached the Father Superior's with Ivan. He felt ashamed of having lost his temper. He felt that he ought to have disdained that despicable wretch, Fyodor Pavlovitch, too much to have been upset by him in Father Zossima's cell, and so to have forgotten himself. The monks were not to blame in any case, he reflected, on the steps, and if they're decent people here, why not be friendly and courteous with them? I won't argue. I'll fall in with everything. I'll win them by politeness, and show them that I've nothing to do with that Aesop, that buffoon, that Pierrot, and have merely been taken in over this affair, just as they have. He determined to drop his litigation with the monastery, and relinquish his claims to the woodcutting and fishery rights at once. He was the more ready to do this because the rights had become much less valuable, and he had indeed the vaguest idea where the wood and river in question were. These excellent intentions were strengthened when he entered the Father Superior's dining room, though, strictly speaking, it was not a dining room, for the Father Superior had only 2 rooms altogether. They were, however, much larger and more comfortable than Father Zossima's. But there was no great luxury about the furnishing of these rooms either. The furniture was of mahogany, covered with leather in the old-fashioned style of 1820. The floor was not even stained, but everything was shining with cleanliness, and there were many choice flowers in the windows. The most sumptuous thing in the room at the moment was, of course, the beautifully decorated table. The cloth was clean, the service shone. There were 3 kinds of well-baked bread, 2 bottles of wine, 2 of excellent mead, and a large glass jug of kvass, both the latter made in the monastery, and famous in the neighborhood. There was no vodka. Rakitin related afterwards that there were 5 dishes: fish soup made of sterlets, served with little fish patties, then boiled fish served in a special way, then salmon cutlets, ice pudding and compote, and finally blancmange. Rakitin found out about all these good things, for he could not resist peeping into the kitchen, where he already had a footing. He had a footing everywhere, and got information about everything. He was of an uneasy and envious temper. He was well aware of his own considerable abilities, and nervously exaggerated them in his self-conceit. He knew he would play a prominent part of some sort, but Alyosha, who was attached to him, was distressed to see that his friend Rakitin was dishonorable, and quite unconscious of being so himself, considering, on the contrary, that because he would not steal money left on the table he was a man of the highest integrity. Neither Alyosha nor anyone else could have influenced him in that. Rakitin, of course, was a person of too little consequence to be invited to the dinner, to which Father Iosif, Father Pacy, and 1 other monk were the only inmates of the monastery invited. They were already waiting when Musov, Kalganov, and Ivan arrived. The other guest, Maximov, stood a little aside, waiting also. The Father Superior stepped into the middle of the room to receive his guests. He was a tall, thin, but still vigorous old man, with black hair streaked with grey, and a long, grave, ascetic face. He bowed to his guests in silence, but this time they approached to receive his blessing. Yusuf even tried to kiss his hand, but the Father Superior drew it back in time to avoid the salute. But Ivan and Kalganov went through the ceremony in the most simple-hearted and complete manner, kissing his hand as peasants do. "We must apologize most humbly, Your Reverence," began Yusuf, simpering affably and speaking in a dignified and respectful tone. "Pardon us for having come alone without the gentleman you invited, Fyodor Pavlovich. He felt obliged to decline the honor of your hospitality, and not without reason. In the Reverend Father Zossima's cell, he was carried away by the unhappy dissension with his son, and let fall words which were quite out of keeping. In fact, quite unseemly, yes." He glanced at the monks. "Your Reverence is, no doubt, already aware." And therefore, recognizing that he had been to blame, he felt sincere regret and shame, and begged me and his son Ivan Fyodorovich to convey to you his apologies and regrets. In brief, he hopes and desires to make amends later. He asks your blessing and begs you to forget what has taken place. As he uttered the last word of his tirade, Yusuf completely recovered his self-complacency, and all traces of his former irritation disappeared. He fully and sincerely loved humanity again. The Father Superior listened to him with dignity, and, with a slight bend of the head, replied, "I sincerely deplore his absence. Perhaps at our table he might have learned to like us, and we him. Pray be seated, gentlemen." He stood before the holy image and began to say grace out loud. All bent their heads reverently, and Maximov clasped his hands before him with peculiar fervor. It was at this moment that Fyodor Pavlovich played his last prank. It must be noted that he really had meant to go home, and really had felt the impossibility of going to dine with the Father Superior as though nothing had happened, after his disgraceful behavior in the elder cell. Not that he was so very much ashamed of himself, quite the contrary perhaps, but still he felt it would be unseemly to go to dinner. Yet his creaking carriage had hardly been brought to the steps of the hotel, and he had hardly got into it, when he suddenly stopped short. He remembered his own words at the elders. "I always feel when I meet people that I'm lower than all, and that they all take me for a buffoon. So I say, let me play the buffoon, for you are, every one of you, stupider and lower than I." He longed to revenge himself on everyone for his own unseemliness. He suddenly recalled now he had once in the past been asked, "Why do you hate so-and-so so much?" And he had answered them with his shameless impudence. "I tell you, he has done me no harm, but I played him a dirty trick, and ever since I have hated him." Remembering that now, he smiled quietly and malignantly, hesitating for a moment. His eyes gleamed, and his lips positively quivered. "Well, since I have begun, I may as well go on," he decided. His prominent sensation at that moment might be expressed in the following words: "Well, there is no rehabilitating myself now, so let me shame them for all I am worth. I will show them I don't care what they think. That's all." He told the coachman to wait, while with rapid steps he returned to the monastery and straight to the Father Superior's. He had no clear idea what he would do, but he knew that he could not control himself, and that a touch might drive him to the utmost limits of obscenity. But only to obscenity, to nothing criminal, nothing for which he could be legally punished. In the last resort, he could always restrain himself, and had marveled indeed at himself. On that score, sometimes. He appeared in the Father Superior's dining room at the moment when the prayer was over, and all were moving to the table. Standing in the doorway, he scanned the company, and laughing his prolonged, impudent, malicious chuckle, looked them all boldly in the face. "They thought I had gone, and here I am again," he cried to the whole room. For one moment everyone stared at him without a word, and at once everyone felt that something revolting, grotesque, positively scandalous was about to happen. Yusuf passed immediately from the most benevolent frame of mind to the most savage. All the feelings that had subsided and died down in his heart revived instantly. "No, this I cannot endure," he cried. "I absolutely cannot, and I certainly cannot." The blood rushed to his head. He positively stammered, but he was beyond thinking of style, and he seized his hat. "What is it he cannot?" cried Fyodor Pavlovich. "That he absolutely cannot and certainly cannot? Your Reverence, am I to come in or not? Will you receive me as your guest? You are welcome with all my heart, answered the superior. Gentlemen, he added, I venture to beg you most earnestly to lay aside your dissensions and to be united in love and family harmony, with prayer to the Lord at our humble table. No, it is impossible, cried Yusuf, beside himself. Well, if it is impossible for Pyotr Alexandrovitch, it is impossible for me, and I won't stop. That is why I came. I will keep with Pyotr Alexandrovitch everywhere now. If you will go away, Pyotr Alexandrovitch, I will go away too. If you remain, I will remain. You stung him by what you said about family harmony, Father Superior. He does not admit he is my relation. That's right, isn't it, Funson? Here's Funson. How are you, Funson? Do you mean me? Muttered Maximov, puzzled. Of course I mean you, cried Fyodor Pavlovitch. Who else? The Father Superior could not be Funson. But I am not Funson either. I am Maximov. No, you are Funson. Your reference, do you know who Funson was? It was a famous murder case. He was killed in the house of harlotry. I believe that is what such places are called among you. He was killed and robbed, and in spite of his venerable age, he was nailed up in a box and sent from Petersburg to Moscow in the luggage van, and while they were nailing him up, the harlots sang songs and played the harp, that is to say, the piano. So this is that very Funson. He has risen from the dead, hasn't he, Funson? What is happening? What's this? Voices were heard in a group of monks. Let us go, cried Yusuf, addressing Kalganov. No, excuse me, Fyodor Pavlovitch broke in shrilly, taking another step into the room. Allow me to finish. There in the cell you blame me for behaving disrespectfully just because I spoke of eating gudgeon, Pyotr Alexandrovitch. Yusuf, my relation, prefers to have plus de noblesse que de sincérité in his words, but I prefer in mine plus de sincérité que de noblesse. And damn the noblesse. That's right, isn't it, Funson? Allow me, Father Superior. Though I am a buffoon and play the buffoon, yet I am the soul of honor, and I want to speak my mind. Yes, I am the soul of honor, while in Pyotr Alexandrovitch there is wounded vanity and nothing else. I came here perhaps to have a look and speak my mind. My son Alexei is here, being saved. I am his father. I care for his welfare, and it is my duty to care. While I've been playing the fool, I have been listening and having a look on the sly. And now I want to give you the last act of the performance. You know how things are with us? As a thing falls, so it lies. As a thing once has fallen, so it must lie forever. Not a bit of it. I want to get up again. Holy Father, I am indignant with you. Confession is a great sacrament, before which I am ready to bow down reverently. But there in the cell, they all kneel down and confess aloud. Can it be right to confess aloud? It was ordained by the Holy Fathers to confess in secret. Then only your confession will be a mystery, and so it was of old. But how can I explain to him before everyone that I did this and that? Well, you understand what? Sometimes it would not be proper to talk about it. So it is really a scandal. No, fathers, one might be carried along with you to the flagellants, I dare say. At the first opportunity I shall write to the synod, and I shall take my son Alexei home. We must note here that Fyodor Pavlovitch knew where to look for the weak spot. There had been at one time malicious rumors which had even reached the archbishop that too much respect was paid to the elders, even to the detriment of the authority of the superior, that the elders abused the sacrament of confession and so on and so on. Absurd charges which had died away of themselves everywhere. But the spirit of folly which had caught up Fyodor Pavlovitch and was bearing him on the current of his own nerves into lower and lower depths of ignominy prompted him with this old slander. Fyodor Pavlovitch did not understand a word of it, and he could not even put it sensibly, for on this occasion no one had been kneeling and confessing aloud in the elder cell, so that he could not have seen anything of the kind. He was only speaking from confused memory of old slanders. But as soon as he had uttered his foolish tirade, he felt he had been talking absurd nonsense, and at once longed to prove to his audience, and above all to himself, that he had not been talking nonsense. And though he knew perfectly well that with each word he would be adding more and more absurdity, he could not restrain himself, and plunged forward blindly. "How disgraceful!" cried Fyodor Alexandrovich. "Pardon me," said the Father Superior. "It was said of old, many have begun to speak against me and have uttered evil sayings about me. And hearing it, I have said to myself, it is the correction of the Lord, and he has sent it to heal my vain soul. And so we humbly thank you, honored guest." And he made Fyodor Pavlovich a low bow. "Tut, tut, tut. Sanctimoniousness and stock phrases, old phrases and old gestures, the old lies and formal prostrations. We know all about them. A kiss on the lips and a dagger in the heart, as in Schiller's robbers. I don't like falsehood, fathers. I want the truth. But the truth is not to be found in eating gudgeon, and that I proclaim aloud. Father monks, why do you fast? Why do you expect reward in heaven for that? Why, for reward like that, I will come and fast too. No, saintly monk, you try being virtuous in the world, do good to society, without shutting yourself up in the monastery at other people's expense, and without expecting a reward up aloft for it. You find that a bit harder. I can talk sense too, Father Superior. What have they got here?" He went up to the table. "Old port wine, mead brewed by the Alyosha brothers. Fie, fathers. That is something beyond gudgeon. Look at the bottles the father have brought out. And who has provided it all? The Russian peasant, the laborer, brings here the farthing earned by his horny hand, wringing it from his family and the tax gatherer. You bleed the people, you know, holy fathers." "This is too disgraceful," said Father Iosif. Father Pacy kept obstinately quiet. Musov rushed from the room, and Kalganov after him. "Well, father, I will follow Fyodor Alexandrovich. I am not coming to see you again. You may beg me on your knees. I shan't come. I sent you 1,000 rubles, so you have begun to keep your eye on me. No, I'll say no more. I am taking my revenge for my youth, for all the humiliation I endured." He thumped the table with his fist in a paroxysm of simulated feeling. "This monastery has played a great part in my life. It has cost me many bitter tears. Used to set my wife, the crazy one, against me. You cursed me with bell and book. You spread stories about me all over the place. Enough, fathers. This is the age of liberalism, the age of steamers and railways. Neither 1,000 nor 100 rubles, no, nor 100 farthings will you get out of me." It must be noted again that our monastery never had played any great part in his life, and he never had shed a bitter tear owing to it. But he was so carried away by his simulated emotion that he was for one moment almost believing it himself. He was so touched he was almost weeping, but at that very instant he felt that it was time to draw back. The Father Superior bowed his head at his malicious lie, and again spoke impressively. "It is written again, bear circumspectly, and gladly dishonor that cometh upon thee by no act of thine own. Be not confounded, and hate not him who hath dishonored thee. And so will we." "Tut, tut, tut. Bethinking thyself and the rest of the rigmarole. Bethink yourselves, fathers. I will go. But I will take my son Alexei away from here forever, on my parental authority. Ivan Fyodorovich, my most dutiful son, permit me to order you to follow me. Funson, what have you to stay for? Come and see me now in the town. It is fun there. It is only one short fest. Instead of Lenten oil, I will give you suckling pig and kasha. We will have dinner with some brandy and liquor to it. I've cloudy berry wine. Hey, Funson, don't lose your chance." He went out, shouting and gesticulating. It was at that moment Ratikin saw him and pointed him out to Alyosha. "Alexei," his father shouted from far off, catching sight of him, "you come home to me today, for good, and bring your pillow and mattress, and leave no trace behind." Alyosha stood rooted to the spot, watching the scene in silence. Meanwhile, Fyodor Pavlovich had got into the carriage, and Ivan was about to follow him in grim silence without even turning to say goodbye to Alyosha. But at this point, another almost incredible scene of grotesque buffoonery gave the finishing touch to the episode. Maximov suddenly appeared by the side of the carriage. He ran up, panting, afraid of being too late. Ratikin and Alyosha saw him running. He was in such a hurry that in his impatience he put his foot on a step on which Ivan's left foot was still resting, and clutching the carriage he kept trying to jump in. I'm going with you, he kept shouting, laughing a thin, mirthful laugh with a look of reckless glee in his face. Take me too. There, cried Fyodor Pavlovitch, delighted. Did I not say he was von Son? It is von Son himself, risen from the dead. Why, how did you tear yourself away? What did you von Son there? And how could you get away from the dinner? You must be a brazen-faced fellow. I am that myself, but I am surprised at you, brother. Jump in. Let him pass, Ivan. It will be fun. He can lie somewhere at our feet. Will you lie at our feet, von Son, or perch in the box with the coachman? Skip onto the box, von Son. But Ivan, who had by now taken his seat, without a word gave Maximov a violent punch in the breast and sent him flying. It was quite by chance he did not fall. Drive on, Ivan shouted angrily to the coachman. Why? What are you doing? What are you about? Why did you do that? Fyodor Pavlovitch protested. But the carriage had already driven away. Ivan made no reply. Well, you're a fellow, Fyodor Pavlovitch said again. After a pause of 2 minutes, looking askance at his son. Why, it was you got up all this monastery business. You urged it. You approved of it. Why are you angry now? You've talked rot enough. You might rest a bit now, Ivan snapped suddenly. Fyodor Pavlovitch was silent again for 2 minutes. A drop of brandy would be nice now, he observed sententiously, but Ivan made no response. You should have some too when we get home. Ivan was still silent. Fyodor Pavlovitch waited another 2 minutes. But I shall take Alyosha away from the monastery, though you would dislike it so much, most honored Count von Moore. Ivan shrugged his shoulders contemptuously, and turning away stared at the road, and they did not speak again all the way home.
Prosaire. Now, a person who behaves affectedly in order to impress others. Archimandrite. Now, the superior of a large monastery or group of monasteries in the Orthodox Church, an honorary title given to a monastic priest. Filch. Verb. Pilfer or steal something, especially an item of small value, in a casual way. Kvass. Now, especially in Russia, a fermented drink, low in alcohol, made from rye flour or bread with malt. Compote. Now, fruit preserved or cooked in syrup. Blancmange. Now, a sweet opaque gelatinous dessert made with flavored corn flour and milk. Synod. Now, an assembly of the clergy and sometimes also the laity in a diocese or other division of a particular church. Sanctimoniousness. Now, hypocritically pious or devout. Sententiously. Ether, in a way given to moralizing in a pompous or affected manner.